Hi there. I'm gonna do something of a follow-up to the a video about politics again. Just a follow-up to the other video. It's about the fact that certain things might have been missed. For example, firearms got brought up briefly, talked about, and I find it amusing that in some countries they consider firearms to be a big deal for the protection of individual rights and freedoms. But I get a kick out of the fact that without the government, without the state, you basically wouldn't have any firearms. Um, you know, to make a weapon, you have to have a lot of input, and those inputs require um, lots of transport, lots of mining, and lots of specialized equipment, lots of machining. And I can't imagine any regular villager or farmer ever actually making such things or doing such things. So, like, you need an establishment of private property in order to establish the concept of mining, and because you need to get lead, you need to get iron, you need to get the composite materials to make steel, you need chemistry degrees in order to get gunpowder. And I just find it amusing how there's a certain impression that firearms equates to outdoorsy lives and freedom and being in the country, when guns are very much a byproduct of a large industrial base. I mean, if it was like the state is what basically invented the firearm back in what the 15th century is when they started to develop firearms, which was little more than a outcrop of crossbows. All weapons that mankind has developed has been basically an outcrop of state power. It's not that I don't. It's not that I don't want to see anybody owning a firearm. I personally am rather indifferent on the topic. Um, don't really care either way. I guess if you want to buy firearms, that's up to you. I don't know about all the laws. I don't make the laws. They're not my responsibility. But yeah, there's been a lot of other things. I find it funny how there's so much problems in all these new democracies and liberal countries like the USA and Canada and Australia and England about the issues of so-called freedom and liberty. And of course, in order to support property, you need to have a large state. Otherwise, you don't have any property. You won't have any defense. It doesn't matter how many things you buy. You're not going to be able to protect it. Property is a byproduct of state power. It's just the fact that under the modern guise of liberalism and democracy, which is the centrist position of the spectrum, then you don't have any of those things. And I somehow in the United States, so I think what the United States is that people don't understand that the conservative Republicans are actually what I might call a center to the little bit to the right, and I would say Democrats are virtual centrist, maybe slightly to the left. There's not much push there. The difference between a Democrat and a Republican is not very much. They both cater to the military-industrial complex as much as they can. Um, and I think the only real difference is that how much social welfare they seem to want to support. But that's quibbling over details because altogether the social welfare structures are pretty mild in the United States. There's not much there. I mean, it's a little bit, but yeah, I think that these these arguments online about state versus no state or limited state. I mean, no, there's not a limited state in any most countries. There's not hardly any limited state. The state has to be ever present in order for you to have a currency and property rights and to run transport across a huge area or any area for that matter requires a tremendous state power because you got to have protection against for everything. And it doesn't matter how, like, I mean, the United States is infamous for having the Old West, but people don't really remember how much lawlessness and wild it was. I mean, people didn't actually like the Old West all that much. It's just been glamorized by Hollywood over the last 75 years because it was a convenient thing to do in movie making. But the real Old West was not really all that glamorous. It was actually kind of a boring area because there really wasn't much there other than the fact that as the states gradually got created and grew, they got created and built out. And now hardly anybody else in the world has ever experienced this. But yeah, it's the situation for the need for property is kind of curious. Regardless of what part of the political spectrum you're on, you're going to always be dealing with an ever-present state. It just depends on how much freedom we're allowing ourselves to have and allowing ourselves to take. And that's really all that's about. And there's not much you can do about it, because if you want anything, manufactured clothes requires an enormous amount of state in order to make any of it, because you got to have ways to farm the material and to run it through a process to turn it into usable material. That's all state. To define how big a road should be, to define how big anything should be. I mean, it's ever present. The state is ever present.